So this presentation is called Ooh, We've Had an Incident, How Should We Respond? My name is Sean Jackson. I am a senior security engineer at Arctic Wolf Networks. We are like a SOC as a service. You hire us and we will put sensors in the network, we watch your stuff for you, and we tell you when ransomware is trying to get into your network. I own my own consulting company, Alliance Information Security, and I am the general manager for B-Side Salt Lake City. A little more about me. Like I said, senior security engineer. I own that company. I'm the general manager for B-Side Salt Lake City, and the CFP is open. If you go to bsideslc.org, you can click on the CFP and you can submit a talk. And B-Sides is all about the community and people sharing what they know and learning from one another and having a society. And it's something I love being a part of building. I'm the husband of one. Some people not from around here don't know if I have one or five. I have one, and I have 5 children, and I play piano better than I speak in front of people. Okay, so this talk is a result of my own research. I felt that I needed to learn more about incident response and incident management. And I got some books and I read upon them, and I was surprised at how many things I didn't know were important. There's a lot about incident response, incident management, kind of intuitive, but there's a lot that there's some details that I wasn't aware of. And when I read them, I thought, oh, aha, that's interesting. And I talked to some other people and they said, oh, really? That's interesting. And I saw patterns and I thought, okay, I think there's enough ahas that everyone could benefit from knowing what some basics are about incident response. And this is incident response and the planning that has to be done beforehand and the decisions that have to be made beforehand. This is part of your technical debt, or I had one employer who referred to it as dirty laundry. If you hold customer data, if you hold financial transactions, if you hold customer health information, you need to plan out, you need to know this stuff so you can respond appropriately when something happens. And a lot of what I might share, you might say is overkill. It is your technical debt. If you have this data, you have an onus to plan on these things. So we're going to talk about the 6 steps of incident response. This is the life cycle of when an incident might be happening to the point when you can close it down and say the incident has been resolved. We're going to talk about assessing the impact of a security incident, essential incident response paperwork, and chain of custody. We'll touch briefly on chain of custody. Step 1 in the incident lifecycle will be preparation, and this is active planning. This is a recurring, constant, per system process. So every system you have, you need to be planning on an incident. First step is NTP. You need to have a consistent time protocol across your entire network. Some of us might not have a network that spans farther than Utah. If you have a data center that is in Las Vegas, and you have another one that is in Chicago, and another one in New York, and another one in Tokyo, and another one in London, and something happens at one of your data centers, and it happens at another data center at the same time, you want to be able to know at what time to you it happened. So either you decide on using GMT, or you want to set all of your networks to be on the same time zone. So all the servers in London, if you did the same time zone, let's say for Utah, all your servers in London and Tokyo and Nevada and Illinois and New York would all be Mountain Standard Time. So if the thing happens in London and happens in Nevada, you could say, oh, they both happened at 3:10 my time. Or if you make it all Eastern or all Western or whatever, you could say they both happened at 3:10 rather than saying it happened at 11:10 Thursday night in London and it happened at 2:10 in Nevada. Make sense? If you are spread out, decide either using GMT or have it all on the same time zone. Next, you need to think about some policies. You need to have log-on warning banners. This is you're setting a precedent for eventual legal legs if you need them. You need to have a banner so when people log into the computer, it says, you're logging into the property of our corporation and you should not have any expectation of privacy. It's not your machine, it's ours. And anything you do could be used for evidence. Some people don't like seeing that. They don't have to work there. So to do that, you want to make sure you talk to your HR department and talk to your legal department to find out what you can say, what the company is going to be comfortable saying. Your legal department probably will have all the teeth they want to put in. Your HR department will try to keep it nice and friendly, but HR wants to make it ready so that should someone do something wrong on their machine, we can snatch them up and get them out the door and maybe to the hands of the authorities. You need to decide in advance how you're going to engage law enforcement. If something happens that is illegal, you've got to take it to the law. Who's going to do that? And how are they going to do that? Also, depending on what's been breached, you might have to go to the media. Who's going to do that? How are they going to do that? You want to have the right to access and monitor for the incident response team. That would be verbiage that might go into the logon banner. But what you're saying is you're creating a precedent so that if something happens, the incident response team has the authority to poke around anywhere, to access anything, and to monitor everything. Now, that's not something that they're going to use all the time. That has to be launched when an incident has happened, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But you need to make sure that has been established and it's possible. And you want to have, like I just said, elevated access accounts that are secured for such emergencies. This would be high-level access to get everywhere, to find what's going on. Next, centralized logging. And oh my goodness, the logs. There are so many logs. You need to have a protected aggregation point where all of the logs flow into. You need to have one place where all the logs come in from all the mail and all the web and all the Active Directory and all the routers and all the switches and all the firewalls comes to one central place. Ideally, that space would not be accessible from the network. You need to ideally, you have to be console access. Everything can write to it, nothing can change it. I recommend syslog-ng. It's open source, has a great way of filtering out the non-essential stuff, the noise, because there's so much noise in the logs. You want to make sure you have lots of terabytes of storage and you have a rotation and a backup because if something happens and you don't catch it, it could be 6 months, let's say, before you found out the attackers had a back door. You want to go back to those 6 months ago and see what they did then in your forensics. Yes? syslog-ng can take anything from Windows. Yeah, yes. You can take anything from Windows and send it to syslog, and syslog would have stuck it all up. And then you also make sure that all the local systems report to themselves as well as to the aggregation point. A hacker who's going to get in there is going to try to clean those logs. And if you have the untouched logs, you have
Keep going. Keep your train of thought. I'm not here to interrupt you, except to say it's the afternoon and keep people really excited. I've got some swag for you to hand out.
Awesome.
So if there's anybody that's particularly animated and fits in the sizes available.
Not so animated, more like medium animated. Medium, it says medium. It's okay, we have medium people. Okay, so if you have logs in two places and they go and cleanse one, and if you have logs from one server, you go to the server and there's no logs, it's a good hint they might be on that box. So that's why you want to have both places. Next, you want to have identity management. You want to go with one user, one account. Your admins shouldn't have 3 accounts. Your HR shouldn't have 2 accounts. The CEO shouldn't have 2 accounts. Everyone should have 1 account. That way you're not wondering which one am I looking at in the logs. You want to make sure you have consistent naming conventions across the entire company. The marketing department doesn't have this kind of username, and the sales department has this kind of username. Everyone has the exact same kind of username, the same format. And it's a good idea to maybe perhaps add the ID number of which employee number they are. It is helpful if you have an insider attack. You can easily see, is it someone, if we have 100 employees, looking at the logs and the funny behaviors coming from employee number 5, or it might be coming from employee number 95. Number 95 is not so vested in the company. They might be more likely to do something funny. Employee number 5 may have been compromised. I'm just making assumptions. I don't know who your number 5 or number 95 is, but that's kind of why you want to put some ID in there so you have a quick decision of what motivation might be or what might be happening. Then system or service account management. This is what I was saying earlier. You need to have the right to monitor. You need to have generic, shared among the incident response team, system and service accounts. These are high level, high access. You need to identify and have a process for when and how incident response can access these accounts. Obviously, anything that is shared and high level will be very valuable. So you have to have all kinds of alerting and bells and whistles going off if the shared account is ever used to log into anything. Obviously, if you have engaged the incident response team and you're logging in, you're expecting to see it. But if everyone's home for Christmas, you don't expect to see it. You need to have a strong process for when password is rotated, and you change it every time someone comes in or out of the incident response team. We'll talk later on about how that can happen. Next up, a jump bag. If you have a remote data center, you might need to spend some time in that data center. You want to have a jump bag with sanitized drives, forms, pens, a printed copy of the incident response team call tree, a Leatherman, SIFT, and Kali on a bootable USB. SIFT is the SANS Incident Forensics Toolkit. Yeah. A flashlight with the batteries removed so there's no chance of corrosion while it sits hopefully for years never being used. You want to have a network tap. You want to have snagless LAN cables so you don't have to wrestle with stuff behind the servers. And if you're going to be there for a long time, you might have a change of clothes. I have heard of people who had to spend 48 hours in the data center. They couldn't get out because they couldn't leave until the problem was fixed. Then, this is one that caught my attention. You need to have out-of-band communications. The incident response team needs to have communications that cannot be monitored by attackers or insiders. This means if your sysadmin could be the bad actor, you don't want him reading your emails where you're finding him out, and he can start covering his tracks. If the incident response team is engaged, communication should then go outside of the corporation. If the CISO wants to set up his own mail server in his basement and the FBI is not going to pay attention, that would work. Something where you're not going to be logging in over corporate stuff into corporate things. Communication should be over cell phones, not over VoIP phones. Those are hackable. And you want to have secondary external email accounts. Next, you got to make sure you're looking at your help desk. This is, again, a preparation and a constant thing. You want to have continual training on first call incident response. You've got to teach your help desk what kind of activity might be an incident. You want to judge for yourself whether it is an incident, but you want them to see what's going on and to let you know. They often have the very first eyes on whatever's funny, either being reported from customers or from other employees. The help desk is quite often the best watchdog for incident response. So you want to define an incident ticket that they can use that starts a process and catches everyone's attention, sends off all the right alerts. And I'll tell you, you might have false positives. You might have someone in help desk who's so excited to be part of the incident response team, being the watchdog, that they make a lot of noise. You want them to make all the noise they want. Don't discourage them and don't say you're making too much noise. You want them to bring everything to you, because the time they've seen something, but they felt you were being rude and you cut them off, and they don't tell you, the attackers might have a foothold. Next up is the incident response team. You need to determine who's in the team and when people rotate in and out. The incident response team, usually there's not someone hired for incident response. If they were, they'd sit around and do nothing most of the time, one would hope. So what you do is you say, this person from development, this person from engineering, and these two people from security, the one who has the forensics abilities, and the HR person, maybe. You say, these are the incident response team. Now, among that team, not everyone's going to have the same skill set. They won't have the same responsibilities. But they're going to have things the business needs anytime. And then you don't want to be on that all the time, so you're going to rotate them out. Because when you're on the team, you should be getting continual training on incident response. Books, videos, conferences, certifications. There's many ways to be constantly learning how to do better incident response and forensics. With hackers always come up with new 0 days and new malware. There's never any end of learning how to reverse engineer malware or to dig into an operating system and find where the rootkit was, what it did, how it got there, and what the attackers did. You want to be constantly trained, which is why I have the video of the guy just pouring the money out. Anyone know what that's from? Mr. Robot. It's from season 2 when the new CTO had to go and dump money out and then light it on fire. Evil corporate. You want to hold periodic incident response drills, disaster games, where you say, this has happened and this has happened. How would we respond? And then you play through it. You don't actually make phone calls and things, but you do paperwork. You can throw it away. It's not real. And the incident response room, or response team, needs to have a room that is lockable with locking cabinets or a safe or something that can be used to secure evidence. This could be the boss's office. But if that's the choice you make, then when an incident happens, the boss no longer has an office and they have to get out. better to have a secured area you can lock with a cabinet that is lockable or a box that is somehow tamper evident. We'll talk about this with evidence. Then you have some decisions you have to make. Are you going to watch and learn what the attackers are doing? Or are you going to pull the plug? When you see them in your network, are you going to pull the plug and stop them? Or are you going to sit back and see what they do? There's arguments for both. Are you going to contain and clean? Or are you going to keep evidence for later? Sometimes if you don't have budget for lots of extra machines, you have to get that machine back into service. You're going to contain it, you're going to clean it and put it back out. If you have enough hardware where you could say, okay, here's your new laptop or here's the new server, we're going to keep this one for research. You need to know in advance what your regulatory and legal breach requirements are. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's, if you have an incident and you're breached and you don't disclose properly, they won't come back to you and say, oh, you didn't know. It's okay. They'll come back to you with a fine and say, it's your fault, you didn't know. And then you need to know the process for handling and reporting criminal activity. And this one is important because what does HR want to do if there's child porn on the CEO's laptop? I know security should not go put the CEO in jail, but if there's illegal material on the laptop, law has to be brought in. So you need to have a conversation with HR. Yeah, if the guy in tech support has child porn, that's easy. But what if the CFO does? What will the company do? And if you're on the incident response team, your answer is always, I contact the law first. Then I go tell HR. So HR needs to know what to do when the cop calls and says, oh, your security engineer says you got porn on the CFO's laptop, child porn. You can choose what kind of porn you want to watch, but it's not kids. You understand the stakeholders in the company and their expectation. What kind of a service level they're expecting from you, what they're wanting the incident response team to do. If you don't know what they want, you can't meet it. And if you don't meet it, they might not be happy with your performance. You need to understand the organizational priorities. This is something that quite often as security engineers, we don't get. We lose focus on what the company's doing, and we focus on what's going wrong. And sometimes we might think that it's our job to fix the problem at the cost of the company making money. And if it's between you getting what you want and the company continuing to make money, you're looking for a job. You need to understand what the company needs, how it makes money, and if something's going wrong, just how much you can insert yourself into that process. You need to understand the incident response model, the roles within the team, who's going to respond first, who has more power, who's going to be talking, like I said, to the press or to legal. And you need to know your forensic capabilities. You need to know if you have someone on staff who can do a deep dive, who can reverse engineer malware, who can recover from a OS that has a rootkit in it. And know now, if you don't have that capability, you would have to outsource that if you want to do that kind of research. So now you can look at who does that and how much it would cost to do that kind of work. That's all preparation. That should be happening well in advance of an incident happening. That should be happening today, assuming nothing's happening at home. Now we go to identification. We're going to confirm there is an incident, and we're going to maintain a chain of custody. So the call comes in from tech support that something's funny. They're describing it, the strange behavior. It's calling out to some made-up domain in Russia. It's all numbers, .ru, and it's talking 50 times a second. Something's funny. So first thing you need to do is remain calm. Things are blowing up, but keep your head on. We're going to start by gathering initial information. Talk to the tech support guy. What did he see? Why does he think it's a problem? If you think it might be an incident, you talk to other people, get their feel for it. Whoever's job it is to pull that trigger, you want to engage them. Start writing the document. You need to document everything from beginning to end. And the first thing in the document is, we got a call from tech support. They said something was funny. It happened on this date, at this time, so-and-so reporting. Sign it. Then you're going to assign the initial handlers. Ideally, it'd be a team of 2, so they can compare, they can bounce ideas, they can do 2 things at once, they can have different perspective. Maybe one has more skill than the other. They can learn. And note the time of the assignment. So you said we got a call from tech support. They said this and this and this and this. The assignment was given to Bob and Sue at 3:45 on October 13th. Then start looking at stuff. Start digging around. You look at the perimeter. Look at your DMZ. Look at your internal systems. Look at your applications. And look at notifications from external sources. If customers called in and said something's wrong, take a look at that. Compare it to normalized baselines. What normally happens in the DMZ? What normally happens for the applications? What are normal logs like? What does traffic normally look like? So you can identify, is there an anomaly? Now comes decision time. Once you've seen if there is an anomaly, if there is something going on, then the guy who's going to pull that trigger and says, yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have an incident, he pulls that trigger. Now, are you going to watch and learn, or are you going to pull that plug? How long would you watch before you said, I've had enough, I know what they're doing, or they're getting too far, they're going to hack the Gibson, and you pull the plug? Next is containment. And I should have a 3. I had the 1, I had the 2 tails, but I like the spider catching the bug. So step 3 is containment. We're doing system and environment modification to stop the attacker. First, you need to know what's happening. You need to know what you're looking at. I like this GIF because you can't tell what you're looking at. If you're having a DOS or a DDoS, you need to control your WAN or your ISP. If you have a virus, you need to contain the LAN and the system. If you have remote compromise, you need to look at the firewall, net trace, and update the access control lists. If you have data loss, you need to look at user activity, you've got a data breach. If your system is being held hostage, like with ransomware, you need to recover from a backup and then harden the machine that was compromised. Then you have notification. If you work for the government, you need to notify the public affairs officer. If you work in a corporation, you need to notify the media liaison. If you're an academic, you need to go to the university media relations office or the district media relations office. Part of the decision of who's going to talk to media, how and when, should be them, and they're going to have their own rule set of when they pull their trigger. They should be talking to legal and HR. It's all worked out beforehand. Internal parties in the company. This could be all of the above or none of the above, depending on your board game rules of what you're going to do within your organization. Management, upper management, HR, legal, public relations, and the system or the business owner of the compromised systems or devices. You want to be careful when you're providing these notifications. The attacker might be an insider. So maybe one of the things you look at before you decide to notify HR or management or whoever get an idea for who the attacker might be, what activity might be happening. So be careful. Always use need to know. If you've had an incident and you've told HR and you've told management, you've told everyone, and you're all excited, and you're at the water cooler, don't tell your buddy. If they don't need to know, it's hard, but they're trusting you with some responsibility in this role on the incident response team. Don't tell your buddy. Don't tell anyone unless they need to know. Anytime you do any kind of notification to anyone, log it in the incident response document. Say who was told, by whom, at what time, and what was said. With all communications, remain factual. Don't offer any speculation. Even if you say we're seeing activity from this IP talking to that IP, that's a fact. When you say we think it's so-and-so, that's speculation. If you know for a fact that Bob is talking to China and he's chatting with someone who is compromising us, that's a fact. If you have evidence, that's a fact. But don't say, we think it's Bob. Keep it factual and don't speculate. Once you've notified people, then you go to stop it through some form of access control. You need to stop the communication, stop the data loss, stop the bleeding. You're going to disable accounts. You're going to change passwords. You're going to change access control lists, and you're going to create firewall block rules. You've got to stop the noise, stop the traffic, stop the data loss. But you don't want to alter system data or the system state. That might be evidence. You want to keep that as best you can, so don't change the servers, but cut them off at the firewall or the access control list. Maintain a low profile. You don't want to be creating all kinds of noise that might let the attacker know they've been caught. Then you start collecting everything. Once you've cut them off, the process is still ongoing. Start collecting all the evidence, all the logs, all the volatile info, all the ISOs of the compromised drives, all the images. Start gathering everything. You want to make a forensic copy for later or parallel analysis. If you have these forensic capabilities, if you're not, you should have hired the people to come in and start looking at stuff. I thought I included a second slide. Sorry about that. And then you want to stop it. You might need to isolate the compromised boxes from the network. If you pull the plug, you might lose stuff. And these days, it is more common to copy the image and then at times that are convenient for the business, take the machine down and begin the re-imaging process and bring it back up. Step 4, and I'm back to a 4, no more spiders, it's a 4. We're going to clean it up. First, we need to know what happened. You want to use that identification information and containment information and determine the root cause and an execution path to remove the attacker from your network. They may no longer have access, but what they dropped on the boxes might still be there. This is something I learned at my last job, 5 whys. This is a great tool to get to root cause analysis, the root cause of the incident, root cause. If you say, what happened? We were compromised, they got in and they stole our email accounts and spammed all of our customers and phished them and now got their data. Why? Because the mail server had a vulnerability that we weren't aware of, or we were aware of and we hadn't patched it yet, and it was slated to come out 2 months from now. And that's how they got in. Why? Because the process we have for patching is too generous, takes too long. And we had a system that was weak and should not have been live. Why? Because we don't have better policies on patching. Why? Because we haven't written them yet. Now you have the solution. Now you got to wonder, did they have a root kit? A root kit is something that's going to get in and infect itself at a base level. It's going to be very hard to find. Antivirus isn't going to get it. You're not going to be able to very easily dig in and get it out like you would a rotted tooth nerve. So, if a root kit is suspected, completely wipe the disk. Reformat it, restore from the most recent clean backup, then update that system and update the apps and patch the OS and harden that as best you can. Close down the ports, close down services. Do everything you should have done when you first stood up the machine. And then improve your defenses. Don't let them in. Make a stronger DMZ. Make a stronger network. Update your operating systems. Update your applications. And do that everywhere. Anytime your company is caught with its pants down, when you're fixing it, you should fix it everywhere you can. That's the best time to do it because that's when people are feeling the most pain, the most shame. Take advantage of that and say, great, let's fix it all. Let's patch the boxes. Let's update the servers. Let's get development to fix the applications. Suddenly it's a priority on everyone's mind. Then start doing some scans. Scan everything for vulnerability assessments. Scan everything so you can see everywhere you might have a problem that you didn't know of before. And then remediate them from high to low. The incident is still open. You can do these scans and say we have a list of priorities that need to be remediated from high to low. And we can't close this incident until that is done. If people start dragging their feet when the initial pain of the breach is gone, that's a way to keep the pressure on them to fix it quickly because you don't want to have open incident reports. Your investors don't like that at all. Step 5, we're going to recover. He does a pretty good job of recovering. I like that. First, we're going to validate it's all gone. Recheck everything. Look at all the applications, all the systems, all the databases, all the routers. Everything is back to those baseline standards that we had at the very beginning. The logs look normal. We don't see the funny business. We've gone through, we cleansed all the machines, we patched everything, we fixed the applications, and we got a new firewall. It's all good. It's all quiet. That's the best day of your life. No signs of compromise. You want to restore operation time window with the business. Make sure you don't disrupt anything. You don't take things down. That everything is up and running and everything is scheduled to happen at certain times. All the backups are working right. If there's offsite things or there's things that are being copied from data center to data center, everything's up working. Everything's the way it should be. Everything's back normal. Then you want to make sure you're monitoring. So next time this happens, you can know about it sooner. And in this GIF, it's just Spock is monitoring what's going on the camera. You want to make sure you have specific snort IDS rules. If you're using snort for your IDS. Start using OS integrity check tools. Log from your routers. Do application logging. If someone's logging in or they brute force a user account, log that. And you might want to get a SIM, or maybe a SIM as a service. Step 6, now we're going to close the incident, and this is the lessons learned. Most importantly, is management satisfied? If management is happy and everything's clean and everything's quiet, then make a note of that, close the incident, and then rinse and repeat. And you're back to step one. Policies, HR, legal, who's on the team, who's getting training, who's going to talk to the media, who's going to talk to legal, how do we do our user accounts? Do we add the IDs to the account name, etc.? Those are the 6 steps of incident response from beginning to end. We have to watch this one because I like this. He's having a computer incident. You've seen this one? But there's a twist. Wait. He made the computer angry. So when you're assessing impact, people want to know, what does the breach cost us? Financial loss is the number of people who were involved times the number of hours it took to fix it or to have the incident open, times the pay rate of all those people, plus any incurred fines or costs, or to hire the outside agency. That's how much it costs. And that cost will always go up if it lasts a long time. And the costs go up depending on how much time there was from when the incident started, not when you heard about it or when you detected it or took action against it, but when it started. The longer they have a toehold or they have a presence in your network to when you fix it, it will cost more. If it was something that was detected and we stopped it in 2 days and it was all clean a month afterwards, you'd say it was a month and a couple days. If it happened 6 months ago, you're going to spend a long time trying to find them, find when they got in, what they did, how they did it, what they did next, what secondary backdoors they put in, what rootkits they put in. You're going to take a long time to go back and find where they were. And your costs will grow and grow and grow. It's more than just hurt feelings. If the attack was degradation, then you had a performance impact. If it was interruption, then you had an asset or system unavailable for a time period. If it was modification, you had data or a file system or software or packets were altered. If it was fabrication, then the attackers introduced new or suspect information into a system. If it was unauthorized use, the resources were used for attackers, their own purposes. In my position right now, I see a lot of people who have set their network up wrong, and they have, one company has 3 public-facing DNS servers, and they're just open to the public, and they're being used for attacks against Google and L3 and all kinds of government agencies for DDoS attacks. And I've contacted them, and they're egg farmers, and they don't know how to fix it. And it's dumb. But yeah, so their resources are being used by attackers for their purposes. Or perhaps the resources were used inappropriately by an existing employee. And if there's interception, then information is leaked and used by an attacker. There's a breach and they got usernames and passwords and they doxed everyone. The paperwork, essentially, you need to know what your organization is beholden to. And your HR and legal departments should know this, and if they don't, ask them to find out. These are the ones where if you don't adhere to their policies and their rules, you could be looking at big fines. First off, there's the Graham-Leach-Biley Act, which is Financial Services Modernization Act of 1999. Good year for parties. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. We call it HIPAA. And there's a follow-up legislation called the Health Information Technology for Economic and Clinical Health Act of 2009. That does not make a very good acronym, and I had never heard of it, but apparently it's a thing. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002 with mandated controls often implemented using COSO and COBIT frameworks. Those, I understand, are mostly going to come into play when you are publicly traded. Until you are publicly traded, I don't think you have too much concern with Sarbanes-Oxley. Then there's your individual state requirements, and Utah does have law about breaches and notification. There's PCI DSS, which is now 3.2. Anyone from Security Metrics? Right on. 3.2 is the most current one, and if you are doing credit card transactions and you are compromised and credit card data is lost, you have some heavy conversations to have. Then there's individual contracts you might have with customers. And you might have individual state employee relations if you have government employees. Now we're almost done, but I want to talk about chain of evidence and chain of custody. They didn't keep their evidence very well. He hid it. Now, I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to pretend to be an attorney, but what we're talking about are legal things. Chain of custody or chain of evidence refers to demonstrable chronological documentation, which is paper, history or trail of the capture or seizure, custody, control points, and methods, transfer, storage, check in and out, analysis, and eventual disposition of evidence, whether it is digital or physical. That's a whole bunch of big words. If criminal activity is suspected or will be sought, if you want criminal prosecution for what was done, you need a chain of custody. You need to have it tight and secure. This is something that should be thought about before an event happens. When you get evidence, note the time of the evidence acquisition, the details of that acquisition, how you got it, and what you did with it, and the evidence itself. If you have a clone, an image of a hard drive, how do you verify you have an exact copy? A checksum. You get a hash of the hard drive, you make a copy, you check the hash of the copy. If the hash matches, they are exact duplicates. That stands up in court. If you make any change to the duplicate, the checksum changes, and you no longer have clean evidence. So if you're going to do any forensic work, you make a copy, and then you make a copy of the copy. You do your work, you check the evidence on the copy of the copy, and you still have the copy of the original. That is still the evidence. You can then clean the hard drive to put it back into performance, but you still have the clean copy that has the same checksum. And then if they say, oh, show us how you found the malware, you make another copy and you do the work on the copy. That's your gold standard. The checksum has to match. And you want to use standardized paperwork throughout the entire organization if there is any collection of evidence. The chain of custody is maintained by a paper trail, log, and form updates, and it must be kept in an at least tamper-evident locker behind a locked door. You need to have 2 locks. It goes in a box that is locked, inside a room that is locked. The concern is that the evidence could be changed. And this would be used by the defense saying your evidence is no good because there was not a clean chain of custody. Does that make sense? If they can say the custody was marred in some way, then the evidence is thrown out. It is no good. And if that's what you're going to use to put away the attacker or the bad employee, you need to have that evidence that's usable. Here's the happy dance. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, in the dark. Mm-hmm. Yeah. can you guys hear what she's saying? If you work for, I don't know if it's all federal agencies. If you contain federal data, you are mandated by what you have to have in that banner. Yeah. Okay, sure. Something so someone who people are aware of the naming conventions and they don't have too much a headache. If this person has 2 accounts, that person has 2 accounts, as opposed to that department has this kind of account, this department has that kind of account, and the sysadmin has 5. And he doesn't need 5. That accounts get created out of ease. That shouldn't be done out of ease and sloppiness. No, I'm saying 1 account, 1 person, 1 account. You're obfuscating yourself. That's about it. Security through obscurity. If someone's attacking you, they know who they're attacking. And you want to make it sure, you want to make it clear, if they log on, they know they are logging onto your servers, and you will go after them. Any other question? It's so much easier to see you all this way. I haven't seen it personally be used, but I know it helps cover the costs that we talked about for the incident process. Buyer beware. And another question or comment? Mm-hmm. Okay. Excellent. That does sound good. All right. I have 2 medium hoodies. These are not t-shirts. They're hoodies. I will fling them. One over here. Oh, I'll try a Frisbee over here. Done. Okay, thank you.